Thank you. That's recording. And I'll just start with the first question. Has gender inequality impacted your life? Why or why not?
Has gender inequality impacted my life? Absolutely. I think, I grew up in a time where when I graduated from college, there were only a few professions I could go into. When I decided that I wanted to go into news, I was relegated to flower shows and really soft topics. I had to really work my way to start covering politics, which is what I wanted to cover. So, and I was always paid less money than the men. Most of the women who were in the business were paid less uh, than than the men. So, in every single way, job opportunities, pay scale, which affected, how I could support my family, and that happens to all women. Many of whom have to work 2 or 3 jobs in order to support their families because they're being paid less. Um, the choice of assignments, getting older, in those days, once you got to a certain age, you were considered too old as a woman. But the men, went on to their 60, 70, continued. So in my career as a reporter, absolutely, I was discriminated against and really had to fight hard, as most women did, in order to achieve success. Towards the end, I mean, I did it for 25 years, a quarter of a century, and certainly by towards the end of that, the disparities had closed, but I don't think they ever did, and I still don't think they are quite closed. So that while you will have women who are making a great deal of money now, I mean, I always still tend to think, and the statistics prove it, that the men are still making more. So just in my first life as a reporter, I found that, that it was an imbalanced opportunity. And I was a single mother, so therefore I had to support my family. And in those days, we had some reporters who went on strike and won their cases and then were paid the same that the men were paid. But you had to do it individually, and you still have to do it individually. And that's one of the beauties of the Equal Rights Amendment, is that what we would say is that you don't have to fight this case by case. What we're saying is that women and men and all people, however you identify, yourself, you're equal and should be paid equally, treated equally, given the same opportunities equally.
Yeah, thank you. Do you think gender equality is attainable in the United States? Why or why not?
I do think it's attainable. I don't think it's really close, because we've been working for as long as this country has been in existence, and certainly 100 years, 100 plus years since women got the vote, 100 years of working on the Equal Rights Amendment, and we still don't have it. I think some of the predictions say that we're 50 or 60 years out. I think that's an optimistic estimation because there's so much ground to make up. All of the women who were not given the opportunity when they were in junior high school, college, all the way up through the ladder, who have been stalled because of their sex, will never make it up. I think that for Black women, every year we do the cycle, it makes me crazy because it never changes. What Black women make versus what a white man made the year before, it takes months for her to make it up. Uh, the discrepancy amounts to millions of dollars over a lifetime. It could be so that you don't catch up. So for many women, they will not catch up. The hope is that their children will, their daughters and sons will be treated equally, and therefore they won't have to be concerned with this discrepancy. I think we have to work for it because it just doesn't make any sense. We all know that women are just as capable as men are, can do, brilliant, brilliant work, and should be compensated for it in the same way and given, the opportunities. For instance, in STEM, now, where we still have a huge problem. STEM is not a new thing, and yet it is still hugely discriminatory, where most of the people who are working in it are men, and most of the ones who are making gazillions of dollars are men. And you get my point. So I think that we have a lot of work to do. I think the ERA is a crucial, not only is it a legal tool to use, it's a cultural tool to use. Culturally saying that women and men are equal, that we are all equal, whether you're binary, however you identify yourself, that we are all equal. Culturally, just saying that will have a tremendous, tremendous effect. And also the Equal Rights Amendment will give people the legal recourse to create laws, to do it, to enact it, so that it's not, and many people think the ERA is just a saying, no, there's a section that says Congress has the right to create the laws to make people equal. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah. Um, Kind of related to that question, what do we as a society need to do to achieve gender equality? I know you had spoke about ratifying the ERA. Or well, it's already ratified, correct? But it just
It's already right, right.
published.
And getting it published and getting it actually accepted
Right.
into society, right? So we've
Yeah.
met all of the requirements, right?
Okay. So yeah, sorry. So what do we as a society need to do to achieve gender equality?
Well, I think we need to, and we've had with the Supreme Court doing away with Roe v. Wade, we see clearly that there is what I call a war against women and girls. Most people don't put the girl part in, because that's a little too provocative, but that's the reality of it. It's a war against girls and women. When you say that they have no control over their bodies, and even if they're 10 years old and have been raped, that they must have a child, and therefore having that life, her life, forever stunted, not being able to go to school, not being able to succeed the way that she should. So that we are in this war. It's a sex war, that we now need to win, so that women need to exert our power at the ballot box to elect representatives who will support us and who will actually understand that this is an extraordinarily frank, blatant battle against girls and women, that the girls and women have to win. So I think that those men and others who, however they describe themselves, if they support this, then I think we can make this happen. But in November we have elections coming up, and in 2024 we have elections coming up, and I'm speaking as an individual. The ERA is a coalition, is a nonprofit organization which really, does not take a political stance, but I think that we can stand for equality and we can vote for equality, and so we have to do that. It's really, it's the ERA and equality is sort of a nerdy thing because we want it culturally. We want people to accept it on their own, that we're all the same, but we do need the legal piece of it as well. And that's a very nerdy thing. It's writing and calling your senators and every single representative, up and down the ballot. We can see how school boards can now enact homophobic, transphobic measures that just shouldn't be. And those people who are elected to those seats need to be dismissed, and equality representatives have to be voted in their place. So, so it is to understand that it's a yes, we should all say we're equal, but it's also taking that next step of on whatever level of decision maker there is, that we have to exercise our voting power to make sure that those are people who accept all of us, no matter how we describe ourselves.
Yeah. So in terms of the intersectionality between race and gender, how has the struggle for gender equality differed for women of color? And have you personally had any experiences with that?
Well, sure. I think it was Shirley Chisholm who talked about this, as she ran for president of the United States, feeling that she had the right to because she was a citizen, she was a politician, she was smart, she knew that she could bring good things to this country. So, of course, she should be able to run for president of the United States. And the brushback that she got first was that she was Black and then that she was a woman. Two strikes against you, there's absolutely no way. I find that in this current environment, women of color, Black women particularly, are subject to savage criticism. We've seen it with Vice President Harris. We've seen it with a Supreme Court justice nominee where senators actually felt that they could insult her, as my mother used to say, to her face, essentially put her down. They felt that they had the right to do that. And again, it's a case of women of color and Black women standing together with Vice President Harris. It was all of the Black sororities and social organizations who had to come together and say, we are a group of women 15 million strong. Will you deal with us? And when we say to you, leave her alone, or you're being overly critical and being antagonistic, vindictive, and in some instances wanting to be violent, because we have to take into effect that we're not just talking about words in so many cases, we're talking about actual violence, the will, the wish to do violence to women of color. So I think that, we have to take it absolutely seriously and to understand. I was just interviewing a woman who runs a candidate training operation, and they have special classes and groups, seminars for women of color, for Black women, to learn how to deal with the special antagonism they will get because they are women of color or Black women running for office. And for those who feel, that we should not have any power and are willing to put us down in whatever way, they can. So it is a unique position. So on the one hand, we know that in the last few elections, it is Black women who have created a balance of power in the United States Senate. The Black women of Georgia who gave us, two senators, one Black, one Jewish, actually, created enough power to get some things done. Not quite enough. We still need a couple more. But at least it was Black women voters who did that. And who so strenuously and loyally supported the Biden-Harris administration, that put them in office. So we know that there is the power there, and figuring out how we use that power to help us, to help ourselves, so that Latina women and Black women can feel that support and use that support in order to lift them up, the ladder. So that's the new thing that we have to learn. We know that we can put other people in power. We know that we can change the balance, but we haven't quite yet figured out how we utilize that to better ourselves. And that's the next step that we have to enact.
Yeah. So what was your experience like being the president and CEO of the ERA coalition? What struggles did you face, and what was maybe the most rewarding part about it?
Well, it was, being able to work in something that I am extremely passionate about was just fantastic. I loved every single day. Even when I was being thrown out of people's offices or turned down, with people, the archivist saying no way, the Senate refusing to take up the vote, even though there were all kinds of institutional roadblocks that were put up. I never for an instant, then or now, felt that what we were doing was not absolutely essential and that we have to keep doing it. We have to proceed until it's in effect. It's a fundamental question of humanity. As Hillary, Clinton would say, women's rights are human. rights. Is it, are we human or not? Are we equal or not? And until we resolve that question, uh, we have a great deal of work to do. So we encountered many difficulties, many obstacles, but some tremendous breakthroughs. The day that we got the 38th state, even though it was beyond our time limit, was so exciting. It was, just that the idea that people had come together to vote for this thing called equality was just overwhelming. So, it was an honor of a lifetime to be a part of that, in the leadership of that. I continue to be on the board and to help it, to make sure that whatever I can do, we will work towards this goal. But I think that, that is, so the perseverance piece of it that gets tested in things like this, when you're up against an enormous social block, is, how long will you fight for it? How strong will you fight for it? How do you enlist others to fight with you? And during the time that we were there, we managed to get 300 partners, organizations across the country who agreed with us and decided to throw their lot in with us to work for this thing called the Equal Rights Amendment. So, all of that was, a tremendous experience. Disappointed that we did not make it to the publishing point, but sure that that's going to happen in the near future. So I told all the team, I said, call me when it happens. I want to be a part of the party. And they said, of course we will. So that I think that we all will be. Can you imagine this country, the women in this country, the celebration that will take place when we have a thing called equality acknowledged in the Constitution, printed in the Constitution as the 28th Amendment, which will be fabulous.
Yeah, that's really inspiring. So thank you for all of your work with that. Why do you think it is important to fight for gender equality? And what would you maybe tell someone like a man or something who thinks that the fight for gender equality doesn't matter since it doesn't affect them?
Well, I will say that I came from a feminist family, but the biggest feminist in my family was my grandfather. He was the one who had, well, we come from Alabama. It was a big farming family. There were 15 children, 9 girls and 6 boys. My grandfather sent all 9 girls to college at a time where Black girls, especially Black rural girls, were simply not going to college, or they were getting married, having children, whatever. But my grandfather was smart enough to know that girls needed an education. And because those 9 girls got college educations, our entire family was lifted up 3 and 4 generations beyond my mother's generation. My children and my grandchildren, now have rights and benefits and education that were unthinkable, when in my grandfather's time. So, I would say that, for those who are not women, or who don't identify as women, to understand that we're all in this together, and that feminists can be of any sex, and that we need you. We need more fathers and grandfathers to make those kinds of decisions, to put their girls at least on an equal footing with their boys, so that their families will prosper as well. So not to think that only women can be feminists. There's my grandfather, Lowndes County, Alabama, educating 9 girls in college to make sure that they had an equal chance in this country.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So like you had mentioned before with the ERA, I'd kind of asked you about that. So once it is eventually published, how do you think we can enforce it? How do you expect it to manifest in today's society, and what impact do you think it will have?
Well, I think it'll have a huge cultural impact. It will make a statement that is truly profound. I mean, if only because we've been fighting for it for a full century, needlessly, as far as I'm concerned. So I think that one of the ways that we will enforce it is that the coalition has started having states to review their own statutes, their laws, to see where they may be in conflict with an equal rights amendment and to fix those. We see that some states have done a pretty good job during the years of updating so that they're not flat out discriminatory. Some states have not, and the reports that are coming back are 600 pages long of things that need to be fixed because they were built into laws, into codes where women could not, some crazy things like they couldn't pump gas on Sundays. I don't know. I'm making that up as an example, but some, really ridiculous things like that, but then some substantial things that got in the way of their succeeding and leading equal lives. So there will be the cultural impact and there will also be the legal impact, that lawyers across the country will be making sure that states, have equality. In fact, New York State is making its way. It has another round of voting to go and then a public referendum on an equal rights amendment that we worked on as a coalition, which includes more than just sex, but race, faith, disability, all of those things that were also not thought about by the founders of our country when they wrote the Constitution. So New York State is on its way to being the first to have that all-inclusive ERA. And I think that that's what ultimately we will be working towards. And you see it now that because so many things are in jeopardy, the same-sex marriage is in jeopardy, abortion is in jeopardy, pregnancy rights are in jeopardy, everything that we thought that voting rights, are in jeopardy. Everything that we thought we had secured over the last 50 or 60 or 70 years is now up for grabs. So, I think that the Equal Rights Amendment will be useful in creating new laws and in solidifying ones that exist, and that we should be able to use it. And I don't think it doesn't happen automatically, but it gives us the legal groundwork to move in that direction.
Yeah, and lastly, is there just anything else you'd like to say at all?
Well, I'd like to say that I am extremely proud of students like you and for what you have brought, the questioning that you have and your interest in this. I think your generation is going to be the generation that fully enjoys equality. I'm hoping that we get there soon so that your college and your early work life and all, has a better fluidity to it so that you won't feel stymied or disparaged, discriminated against by the man sitting next to you, by the others who are succeeding higher than you are simply because you're being questioned because you're a girl of color. So I'm hoping and I'm praying that your generation is the one who will take a deep breath and be able to say, this is done, and my life and future generations will be able to enjoy equality and not have to always be looking over your shoulder and fighting. We shouldn't have to fight for these things. You shouldn't have to take to the streets for your rights. You'll have them as you should, as a matter of course.
Yeah, I'm going to